Hi, and welcome to Reddit Confessions. Today's story is not about revenge. It's not about justice. It's about that quiet, suffocating moment when you realize, you've been played, and you never even saw the game begin. She left at 2:03 p.m. That part is burned into my brain. I'll be back in an hour, she said, grabbing her keys like it was the most ordinary Tuesday in the world. It's just a quick coffee with a friend. Don't wait up for lunch. She was wearing that gray sweater with the sleeve that kept sliding off her shoulder, the one she only wore when she wanted to look effortless but still dangerous. I remember because it smelled like her new vanilla body spray, the kind she said she didn't wear for me, but because it made her feel in control. And like an idiot, I nodded. Like an idiot, I smiled. Like an idiot, I didn't ask which friend. 37 minutes later, I stood in front of the open fridge, holding a half-wilted bag of spinach and wondering if I could survive on cereal again. That's when I texted Emery. I didn't think she'd come. She usually doesn't. But she replied in under 5 seconds. On my way. 12 minutes later, she was in my kitchen, barefoot, sleeves rolled up, pulling ingredients from my neglected pantry like she lived there. She brought the kind of energy I hadn't felt in our house for months, playful, warm, casual. I'm making you dinner, she said. I'm sick of seeing you eat sadness with a spoon. It made me laugh. It shouldn't have. But it did. She started prepping pasta, the good kind, the one that takes 20 minutes and 3 emotional breakdowns to cook just right. I set the table because. I don't know. Because it felt right. And that's when I heard it, the front door unlocking. The sound of her heels. Click. 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 She walked in, holding her phone like a shield, her voice still echoing from a goodbye call. And then she saw us. 2 plates. 1 pot on the stove. Emery humming along to a Billie Eilish song while stirring garlic butter. She stopped in her tracks. I remember the way her eyebrows didn't move, just her mouth. Dinner? She asked, like the concept offended her. I said nothing. Because everything I wanted to say would have made me look guilty, for something I didn't even do. She looked at the plates. Then at Emery. Then back at me. No yelling. No drama. Just 6 words. I thought you weren't hungry today. And then she walked upstairs. That was the exact moment my stomach dropped. Not because she caught me doing something wrong, but because she was too calm. Too quiet. She wasn't surprised. She was waiting for it. And the scariest part? I suddenly realized, she didn't ask who Emery was. She already knew. Somehow, she already knew. And that meant she had secrets too. Secrets she'd never planned to tell me. But I was about to find them anyway. I didn't eat that night. Emery left shortly after the awkward silence settled, muttering something about giving her space and not wanting to add fuel. I nodded, but I didn't understand any of it. My mind wasn't with her anymore. It was climbing the stairs behind my wife, crawling after the silence like a child afraid of the dark. I found her in the bathroom, casually removing her eyeliner like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just walked in on her husband sitting at the dinner table with another woman. Like 2 steaming plates of tagliatelle meant absolutely nothing. You said you'd be back in an hour, I mumbled, leaning against the doorframe like some spineless extra in a soap opera. She didn't look up. Traffic. That's funny, I said quietly. Because you drove west. There's no traffic going west at 2 p.m. That got her attention. She stared at me through the mirror. Are you tracking me now? No, I replied too fast. I just guessed. She turned back to her eyeliner, calm as ever. Okay, Lowell. That was it. No explanation. No curiosity about why Emery had been there. Just my name. Like that was supposed to shut down the entire conversation. I don't know why, but I started looking through her things the next morning. Maybe I was searching for proof of my own paranoia. Maybe I hoped I'd find nothing and could finally tell myself to stop imagining shadows. But instead, I found a receipt. It was tucked inside her coat pocket, the gray wool one she only wore when she wanted to be taken seriously. A folded piece of glossy paper from a place called Oliver's Grove. A high-end restaurant I'd never even heard of. The kind of place where they don't print prices and the menus are handwritten by someone named Pascal. It was dated yesterday. 3:41 p.m. 2 entrees. 1 dessert. 1 sparkling rose. There was no coffee involved. I felt something sharp twist in my stomach. And yet, I didn't confront her. I couldn't. Not yet. I didn't have the full picture. Just blurry shapes and guesses. So instead, I sat on the couch like a prop husband and watched as she came downstairs an hour later, fresh as spring, acting like we hadn't skipped over 1,000 silent words. "I have errands," she said. "Need anything?" "Your truth," I almost whispered. But I shook my head instead. When she left, I didn't even wait 5 minutes. I grabbed my keys, locked the door, and drove straight to Oliver's Grove. It was nestled between 2 overpriced boutiques in the newer part of town, white tablecloths, candlelight, the kind of place you take someone when you want them to feel like they matter. I walked in, trying not to look like a man unraveling. "Hi," I said to the hostess, who smiled without judgment. "I think my wife had lunch here yesterday." I believe her reservation was under Celine. She paused, tapping on the screen. "Celine Oakridge," she confirmed. I nodded too quickly. "Yes. That's her." "Ah yes," she smiled. "2 guests. Window seat. Very polite." I felt a knot form in my throat. "Do you remember who she was with?" She laughed softly, clearly used to jealous spouses. "Tall man, salt and pepper hair. I think he wore a blue sweater. Seemed familiar with the staff." Familiar with the staff. Familiar. The word rang like a bell I hadn't heard in years. I thanked her, left a tip for absolutely no reason, and stumbled back into my car like the air had thickened. Salt and pepper. Blue sweater. That could be anyone, right? But deep down, I already knew. And the moment I pulled into our driveway, I saw something that sealed it. A second wine glass, rinsed but still faintly pink at the rim, sitting in the dish rack beside the sink. She didn't have errands. She came back early. And someone had been here. In my home. While I was still trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. I hadn't lost her. No. I was something worse. I had already been replaced. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. Not after that wine glass. Not after the smudge of unfamiliar fingerprints on the faucet. Not after the faint scent of cologne that didn't belong to me lingering in the hallway like it had rights here. I stood motionless in the kitchen for a long time, just staring at that second glass, like maybe if I stared hard enough, it would offer me an explanation. But it didn't. At first, I convinced myself it was Emery's. Maybe she rinsed her glass when I wasn't looking. But Emery doesn't drink rose. She's allergic to sulfites. She once had to go to urgent care after half a glass at a wedding. And then I remembered something worse. Emery never took a sip. She left before dinner started. Before wine was poured. I remember because I offered, and she declined, laughing, calling me predictable for always reaching for the same bottle. So who drank it? And why did my wife, my supposedly trustworthy wife, feel the need to rinse the glass and leave it upside down like she was covering a secret with a towel? I opened the security camera app on my phone. We don't have anything fancy, just a single motion-triggered camera over the back porch. It's old. Sometimes glitchy. But I still checked. And there it was, motion detected at 5:18 p.m. the previous day. Right when she said she was running errands. The footage was blurry, but the shape of a man, tall, broader than me, stepped into frame and paused before entering through the sliding glass door. He didn't even knock. He just walked in like he had a key, or like she opened the door before the camera caught it. There was no recording of him leaving. Either he snuck out quietly, or worse, she deleted it. I checked the footage folder. A 2-hour gap. The file names jumped from 5:19 to 7:23. Gone. She had erased it. Not by accident. Not the way old footage gets overwritten. This was deliberate. Targeted. Someone had gone in and cleaned it. And Celine was the only one who had the admin password. I didn't sleep that night. Not a wink. I just sat there on the couch, scrolling through her Instagram feed, suddenly aware of every shadow in every photo. Every compliment from men I didn't know. Every wine glass in the corner of a boomerang. Every caption that now sounded like a lie. At 2:13 a.m. I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked her laptop. It was stupid. Wrong. Invasive. But something inside me had broken hours ago, and I wasn't sure I had the tools to fix it. Her password was still our anniversary date. Funny how people forget to change things once they've emotionally checked out. I went through her calendar first. It was clean. Too clean. Meetings labeled strategy sync and wellness break. Nothing unusual, except that I knew Celine hated wellness anything. She once called meditation boredom with incense. I opened her downloads folder. Scanned every file. One caught my eye, a PDF labeled Pinecrest Cabin Invoice. My heart dropped into my stomach. I clicked. Reservation for 2. 1 weekend. Private hot tub. Late checkout. Booked 3 weeks ago under her name. She never told me about a weekend getaway. And I never went to Pinecrest. That's when I heard it. A car door. Then footsteps on gravel. It was 2:41 a.m. No one should have been outside. I tiptoed to the living room window and carefully pulled the curtain just an inch to the side. Nothing. No car. No movement. But I had heard it. And then, my phone buzzed. One notification. Emery. Lowell, we need to talk. Now. I know who he is. And you're not going to like it. I stared at that message for a long time, my hands trembling like the truth itself was vibrating through my bones. I didn't know who he was yet. But something in Emery's text told me. I already did. I just hadn't accepted it yet. I didn't reply to Emery's message right away. I couldn't. I read it 5 times, each word vibrating through my chest like a drumbeat I couldn't silence. I know who he is. And you're not going to like it. That sentence clung to my ribs as I sat there in the dark, phone in hand, the quiet house now feeling like a puzzle where every piece screamed betrayal. The shadows felt longer. The silence between the walls, heavier. I wasn't just suspicious anymore. I was drowning in something thick, something I couldn't swim through. At 2:56 a.m. I finally texted back, come over. 10 minutes later, she knocked. Softly. Like she didn't want the house to know she was here. Emery stepped inside wearing leggings, an oversized hoodie, and that look, the one that people wear when they're about to tell you the kind of truth that splits your life into before and after. Her eyes darted around the living room, then settled on me. She didn't sit. Where's Celine? She asked quietly. Asleep. I think. I said it, but I wasn't sure. For all I knew, she was on the phone with him in our bedroom, whispering about cabins and cover stories. Emery walked toward the kitchen but paused when she saw the wine glass still sitting on the counter. I'd left it there deliberately, like evidence in a courtroom I hadn't built yet. She noticed it immediately. That wasn't mine, she said. I know. She turned back to me. Okay. Then you're ready. For what? To hear the part of the story you weren't supposed to find out. I felt my throat close. Emery, what do you know? She sat down at the dining table, her hands nervously picking at the strings of her hoodie. And then she dropped it, like a bomb I wasn't prepared to catch. You remember when you introduced me to your cousin, Marek? I nodded slowly. Of course. Why? He and Celine started messaging behind your back. Months ago. It felt like time skipped. Like a second got swallowed. I blinked, trying to process the syllables she just formed. My cousin. I repeated like a malfunctioning recording device. They didn't mean for it to happen, she said quickly. At least that's what she told me. It started as small talk. Instagram comments. Then DMs. Then private calls. Then, the cabin. My breath left my body like it was owed to someone else. Marek. My cousin. My closest family. The only person who stayed with me after my parents passed. The guy who helped me fix our deck last summer. The guy I trusted with a spare key to our house when we were on vacation. That's why he knew the layout. That's why he knew how to avoid the camera. That's why Celine didn't have to introduce him to anything, he'd already been here. I laughed. A quiet, stupid laugh that felt more like choking. You knew this whole time. Emery looked up, her eyes glossy. Only recently. I confronted her about it last week. That's why she was so tense when she came home and saw me here. She didn't expect me to be in your kitchen. And yet, you didn't tell me. I wanted to. But I didn't want to be the reason your marriage exploded. I thought maybe she'd stop. That she'd come clean on her own. She didn't. No, Emery whispered. She didn't. I stood up, needing air, pacing toward the hallway, the same hallway Marek had probably walked down without hesitation, toward my bedroom, toward my wife. My world blurred at the edges. My stomach turned with images I couldn't unsee even though I'd never seen them. How long? I asked, still facing the wall. Emery hesitated. I don't know the exact timeline. But the Pinecrest reservation was for your anniversary weekend. I spun around, my voice cracking. My anniversary? She winced. Lowell. I'm sorry. That was it. I walked into the garage. I didn't even know why. I just needed to look at something real. I stood in the cold, staring at the old canoe Marek and I used to take out every fall. It still had our initials carved into the wooden frame. L+M. We thought it was funny at the time. Brothers in everything. Apparently, even in betrayal. When I came back in, Emery was gone. She'd left a note on the counter. I didn't tell you to hurt you. I told you because I couldn't lie for her anymore. I stayed awake until sunrise. And then I walked into the bedroom, ready to ask Celine a question I never thought I'd need to ask my wife. She wasn't asleep. Celine was sitting upright in bed, her back resting against the headboard, scrolling through her phone with her reading glasses on like nothing had just detonated in our life. As if I hadn't just pieced together an emotional crime scene she orchestrated while I was cleaning out the gutters, still thinking I was loved. When I walked in, she looked up. Not startled. Not guilty. Just, annoyed. Like I had interrupted her mid-scroll. You're up early, she said flatly, placing her phone on the nightstand. I stood there in the doorway for several seconds, trying to feel like a man, trying not to fold into myself like laundry. But my voice, when it came, was already trembling. Was it Marek? Her jaw didn't drop. She didn't gasp. She blinked. Once. And then came the performance of a lifetime. What? She asked slowly, dragging the word out like I'd just accused her of robbing a museum. I didn't move. I didn't look away. I didn't give her the space to rebuild her mask. Don't insult me, I said, my voice barely audible. She stared back. For a moment, I thought she might actually own it. That maybe this would be the moment where the illusion cracked and she'd finally tell me the truth with shaking hands and regret in her eyes. But instead, she tilted her head, just slightly, and her mouth curved upward. You've been talking to Emery, haven't you? I felt something cold crawl up my spine. That's your response. She swung her legs over the side of the bed and stood up, her robe shifting as she moved toward me like a prosecutor approaching a witness she was confident she could destroy. You don't know the full story, Lowell, she said calmly, as if this were a business meeting and not the moment our marriage was bleeding out on the floor. Then explain it to me, I whispered. And she did. Or rather, she gave me the story she'd clearly rehearsed. She claimed it started as casual conversation at my aunt's funeral. That Marek had been there for her emotionally, because I had been so numb. She said they bonded over grief, that it got confusing, and that it was never meant to cross the line that it did. And what line was that? I asked, trying to keep my face from contorting. She didn't answer. I pressed again. Did he touch you in this house? She looked away. That was all I needed to know. But she didn't stop. She kept talking, as if piling on more details would somehow soften the blow, as if turning it into a sad story would make it less ugly. She said it happened more than once. That it had stopped. That it meant nothing now. That I had pulled away first. That she had been lonely. That we had grown cold. She tried to drag me into her guilt like it was a blanket we could both share. And I let her finish. I stood there and let her tell me the most condescending, emotionally sanitized version of betrayal I'd ever heard. Her voice barely cracked. She had no tears. She was a woman who had already made peace with her decisions and expected me to eventually do the same, if I wanted to keep her. That's when it hit me, she didn't think this was the end. She thought this was a phase in our story. A bump. A fight. She thought I would scream, cry, maybe disappear for a night, and then return, bruised but obedient. She thought I was still the same man who fixed light bulbs and folded her sweaters and listened to her talk about coworkers I couldn't stand. She thought I'd swallow this the same way I swallowed all the little signs before it. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I asked one question. Why him? Her expression shifted. She paused. And then gave me the kind of answer you wish you could unhear. Because he made me feel like I mattered, she said. And you stopped seeing me. I think something in me cracked right then. Because I realized, she wasn't sorry. Not really. She wasn't mourning what she'd done. She was mourning the fact that I'd found out. The silence between us stretched long and wide. She waited for me to say something. Maybe to apologize. Maybe to beg her not to go. Instead, I walked downstairs. Each step felt like molasses. My body was heavy with the weight of 1,000 things I wanted to say but couldn't. And when I reached the kitchen, I saw something I hadn't noticed the night before. A button. A small, navy blue button on the floor, near the sliding glass door. Not mine. Not from anything I owned. It had a tiny silver symbol etched into it, a crest I didn't recognize. Military maybe? Designer? I picked it up. My hand shook as I turned it over. And suddenly, a name clicked into place that I hadn't expected. A name that wasn't Marek. I stood there holding that button like it had weight, like it could tip the entire balance of what I thought I knew. And maybe it already had, because the moment I turned it over and saw that strange silver crest, I knew something was off. It wasn't Marek's. I'd been around him enough to know his style, flannel, jeans, worn boots. Nothing like this smooth, navy, military-looking piece with precision stitching. No fraying. No wear. And absolutely not part of anything I owned. I slid open the junk drawer and dumped it in there, just in case I needed to prove it existed later, or worse, if I needed to match it to a jacket that I hadn't yet realized was missing. I didn't confront Celine. Not yet. I couldn't. The memory of her standing there, calmly explaining her affair with my cousin like she was reciting someone else's biography, it was still bouncing around in my skull, clanging against every piece of my past. But now this button, this stupid, silent object, it whispered that there might be another one. Another man. Another layer. I spent the next day pretending. Pretending to work. Pretending to respond to emails. Pretending I wasn't imagining her phone vibrating in the other room with texts that weren't mine. When she left to run errands, again, her new favorite euphemism, I waited exactly 4 minutes before checking the laundry room. She always kept her dry clean only clothes in a separate bag, that "don't touch this unless you want to destroy it" bag. And in that bag, I found it, a dark navy blazer I'd never seen before. Crisp. Expensive. Smelled like expensive aftershave and guilt. And sewn inside. The same type of button, minus the missing one. It wasn't hers. It was his. And in the inner pocket? A business card. No name on the front, just an embossed symbol, the same silver crest from the button. On the back, in neat writing, J. Ashford. That name didn't mean anything to me. Not yet. So I did what any man in the 21st century does when the walls are closing in and the ground starts shaking, I Googled. And what I found made my stomach knot. James Ashford. Retired military. Private security consultant. Based just 2 towns over. Photos of him attending high-profile events, sharp suits, clean cut, always standing too close to someone else's wife. He wasn't just some guy. He was a professional. I didn't know what Celine was doing, or what she was involved in, but this wasn't a one-time lapse of judgment anymore. This felt organized. Practiced. Calculated. And suddenly, everything started clicking. The missing hours that didn't align with her coffee meetings. The receipts for strange flower deliveries that weren't addressed to our house. The nights she insisted she was too tired to talk, to eat, to exist. The sudden switch to cash-only purchases when she used to charge everything down to gum. She was covering her tracks. But not from Marek. He was a smokescreen. This man, Ashford, he was something else entirely. And worst of all, she never told me she even knew him. At dinner that night, I waited. I watched her eat, twirling spaghetti on her fork like she didn't have secret compartments in her purse and men with embroidered jackets sneaking out of our house at 2 a.m. I almost asked her. I almost threw the button on the table and asked her what it unlocked. But instead, I tried something different. I asked her about the cabin. What happened to that anniversary weekend you were planning? She paused, not for long, but enough for me to catch it. Oh, she said, dabbing her mouth with a napkin. It fell through. The place was booked. You booked it 6 weeks in advance. Yeah. Something came up. What came up? She tilted her head. Why are you asking me this? That was the moment I realized she wasn't nervous. She was annoyed. I was the disruption now. I was the one behaving irrationally by trying to understand my own marriage. She changed the subject quickly, asking if I wanted dessert. I said no. That night, I lay beside her, wide awake, while she slept soundly, or at least pretended to. And in the morning, she left early for work, saying she had a full day of back-to-backs. I nodded, kissed her forehead, told her to have a good day. Then I grabbed the business card. And I drove to James Ashford's office. His name wasn't on the door. Just that same silver crest. I didn't knock. I just sat in the parking lot across the street for 2 hours, watching. And then, at exactly 11:42 a.m., I saw her. Celine. Walking out of the building. Not in a panic. Not in a rush. But with that same slow, confident stride she used when we were first dating. Like she owned the street. Like no one could touch her. And behind her? James Ashford himself. He wasn't touching her. But he didn't have to. They didn't speak. They didn't look at each other. But their timing was too perfect to be coincidence. He walked in the opposite direction. She got in her car and drove off like it was just another appointment in her day. But I knew. They were connected. And Marek? He was just a decoy. I didn't go home after I saw them. I couldn't. My hands were shaking so hard I had to pull into a gas station and sit there, staring blankly through the windshield while the wipers scraped across a perfectly dry windshield. It was automatic, like me, like everything I'd become lately, movement without thought, existence without control. And in my head, her footsteps echoed on that sidewalk like she was still walking away from me. I kept thinking about the timing, how clean it was. Celine walked out, Ashford followed shortly after. No conversation. No glance. Just distance perfectly choreographed to look like coincidence. That wasn't the behavior of lovers. That was the behavior of people with a shared secret. The kind that needs discretion. And that made it worse. Because whatever this was, it wasn't romantic anymore. It was something else. I went back the next day. I parked across from the same building, windows tinted, hoodie pulled low. The silver crest on the door still gleamed in the sun, and for the next 3 hours, nothing happened. No Celine. No Ashford. Just me and my growing sense of dread. At 1:27 p.m., the front door opened. He stepped out, alone this time. Black coat. Dark slacks. Earpiece. He looked like a man who belonged somewhere far more important than the suburbs. And yet here he was, locking the door to a nameless office next to a juice bar. I waited until he got in his car, a sleek charcoal sedan with plates I memorized instantly. And I followed him. I don't know what I was expecting. A private airfield? A warehouse full of secrets? What I got was weirder. He drove to a small bookstore downtown. One of those cozy places that pretends it's barely surviving, with wooden chairs and jazz playing quietly over old speakers. I parked 2 spaces behind him and waited. He stayed inside for 37 minutes. When he came out, he was holding a single book. And then, something I wasn't prepared for, he walked directly to my car window. I froze. He knocked once. I rolled it down halfway, heart pounding like I was about to be arrested. "Lowell," he said calmly, like we were old colleagues. "Get out. We should talk." I don't know why I listened. Maybe because hearing him say my name made everything feel too real to keep pretending. I stepped out slowly. He nodded toward a bench on the sidewalk, just out of earshot from foot traffic. "We Saturday, you've been watching me," he said. Not a question. "You've been seeing my wife," I said back. Still not a question. He stared at me, then exhaled like a man tired of keeping things buried. "Not the way you think." "I don't even know what I think anymore." He looked away, then pulled the book from the paper bag and handed it to me. It was a hardcover. Black binding. No dust jacket. Title: The 7 Versions of the Truth. What is this? Celine bought this book here 3 months ago. She gave it to me the night we met. You're telling me my wife gave you a book the first time she met you? She didn't give it to me as a gift, he replied, eyes narrowing. She gave it to me as a signal. My mouth went dry. A signal for what? He paused. A long, careful silence. To tell me she was ready to disappear. I stared at him, jaw open, not understanding the words until the weight behind them landed. Disappear? I repeated. From me? She hired me, he said. As a consultant. She came to me under a different name. But I knew who she was by the second meeting. She hired you. To do what? To create a version of her life where you didn't exist. That's when the ground really shifted. I wasn't standing on anything anymore. Not even rage. I was floating above a story I no longer recognized. She wasn't planning to just leave you, Ashford continued. She wanted to reinvent herself. New name. New location. Legal guidance. Safety protocols. Was she running from me? I asked, horrified. Did she say I? No, he interrupted. She never said you were abusive. Or dangerous. Quite the opposite. Then why? He looked me dead in the eye. She said you were too easy to disappear from. I nearly threw up right there on the pavement. She said you wouldn't fight, he went on. That you wouldn't track her down. That you were too emotionally passive to make it difficult. He paused. I disagreed. I felt the edges of my vision go dark. She changed her mind, he said. That's why I ended the contract. But not before she gave me every detail about your life. Every password. Every place you like to go. She wasn't just going to leave you. She was going to erase you. I couldn't breathe. I actually couldn't breathe. She didn't even need to lie, I said numbly. She just needed me to keep trusting her. Ashford stood. I didn't come to destroy your life. But you were going to find out eventually. And she's not finished. She's pivoted, but not stopped. What does that mean? It means Marek was the test run. I was the blueprint. And whoever comes next, might be the execution. He walked away after that. Left me sitting on a bench with a book I didn't understand and a life I no longer recognized. And when I got home, Celine was already there. Smiling. Dinner on the stove. A candle burning. Like she hadn't just tried to vanish me from her world like I was a typo. She hummed while stirring the sauce. That's what I remember most. The sound of her voice floating through the kitchen, light and casual, as if the last 7 days hadn't revealed that my wife once tried to delete me from her life like a misspelled word in a document. She turned, smiled, held out a spoonful for me to taste. And for a brief second, I actually considered pretending. Going along with it. Eating the food. Laughing at whatever small talk she'd lined up. Living in the shell of a life that had already been hollowed out from the inside. But I didn't. Not this time. I didn't scream. I didn't throw accusations. I didn't wave Ashford's business card in the air like a smoking gun. I just looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who once made me believe love was a quiet, permanent thing. And I saw something different now. I saw a person who knew exactly how much of herself to withhold. How much silence to weaponize. How to step out of a room and leave me doubting the temperature. I saw someone who had studied me, not to understand me, but to predict me. She wanted me docile. Predictable. Stationary. She didn't want to fight a man who would chase her. She wanted to quietly escape a man who wouldn't. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. She was wrong. I left that night. I didn't tell her where I was going. I didn't leave a note. I just grabbed a bag and walked out the front door while she was distracted refilling the salt. I stayed with Emery for a few days, not because I needed comfort, but because I needed clarity. I walked trails. I ate slowly. I sat in silence and asked myself the question I'd been afraid to answer since the day she said, "It's just coffee with a friend." Who was I before her? And the truth? I was a man who apologized too quickly. Who folded laundry just to feel needed. Who convinced himself that loyalty would eventually be enough. But now, I was something else. I was awake. 3 weeks later, I filed for divorce. I didn't text her. I didn't argue. I didn't ask for a single thing beyond what was mine. She called me once. Left a voicemail that said, "Lowell, are you really doing this?" I listened to it twice. And then I deleted it. Because yes, I was really doing this. I was choosing me. I don't know what's next. I'm not pretending this is a perfect ending. I still sleep with questions. I still wake up to silence that feels a little too heavy sometimes. But I'm no longer living in someone else's disappearing act. And that, for the first time in years, feels like peace. Thank you for watching this story on Reddit Confessions. If you've ever had a moment in your life where someone tried to erase you, or where you had to walk away to find yourself again, share it in the comments. Your story might help someone else find their courage too. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you want more powerful, real stories like this one. See you in the next confession.